Hello, everybody. Dave Hall, the Prosperity Guy here. Welcome, welcome. You may notice a big change today in our live show. I'm missing my co-partner, CR Tulane. He is in the process of getting moved into his new home, I think, right now. Just talked to him a couple of minutes ago, and he was complaining about the muggy heat in the South, which is something you have to get used to. He's lived in the South before, so he's very familiar with it, but it's hard to get back accustomed to the first time. And especially if you're trying to move furniture into a home, a lot of hard, heavy lifting, a lot of stuff that's going to make you sweaty and make those clothes stick. Anyway, glad to have you with us today. As we go through here, I'm going to be handling the show myself. So hopefully we can stay on track. Hopefully I can get to your various questions and we can get through the next half hour. If you've got questions yourself, please feel free to put those into the chat panel. If you'd like to just say hi, let me know that you're here live with me today. Go ahead and put that in there as well. We've got pre-populated questions that we're going to go through that come from our various webinars. Today, we're going to be talking about paychecks and playchecks. This is a webinar that is done by Tom Hegna, one of the top retirement educators in the industry. He and I partnered up for this presentation. He provides the material. He's written a book by that same title. He's been a best-selling author for a number of years. He's done a show on PBS. Great educator and a lot of good information. So today we're going to be going through some questions we got from there. I'll be trying to jump back and forth. So if my eyes wander, it's not because I'm not paying attention to what's going on here. It's I'm trying to run all of the dashboards here in the back as well. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first question. First question here is from George. What about counterparty risk? Example, annuity issuer going bust or change of control. This is something that gets brought up a lot when we talk about insurance, when we talk about annuities. People get worried that these companies that are providing these products are going to have financial problems, that they're going to go out of business. And legitimate concern, something we all should look at. We want to make sure that our investments are being secure. A couple of things to talk about here. Number one, when we look at insurance companies, they are one of the most secure financial companies that we have out there. Why? Because of the way the government handles the leverage these companies are allowed to access. If you look at a bank or traditional financial institutions, federal government's allowing them to completely leverage the assets they have, maybe 10, 20 times the assets they have on their books. When we look at insurance companies, government's only allowing them to go out maybe 1 or 2 times the assets they have on their books. So when we look at it from an overall perspective, very stable, very secure, but there are times where these companies can have financial risk and they can end up having some financial issues. If that happens, there are basically 2 safe nets that you can look to. Number one is every state has an insurance fund that's designed to bail these companies out. So when policies are purchased, even when licenses are implemented, these insurance companies and yourself may be contributing into the insurance fund. So there's money going in there. If there's a problem, the insurance fund steps in and starts bailing out these policies. But even a far greater option out there are the other insurance companies, because these insurance companies, last thing they want to have happen is to have news articles out there that Joe passes away and his wife Susan gets no death benefit, or Susan's during the middle of her retirement, 70 years old, all of a sudden her payments stop from her annuity company. That happens, it destroys the trust that we put into the insurance industry as a whole. And as a result, you're going to have issues with any company selling various policies. So we have those companies. Generally, what will happen is the insurance fund will step in. It's going to cover some of those costs, which will basically create a situation where the value of that asset now is less than what it looks like on the books. Therefore, the insurance companies can step in, buy those at a discounted amount, and everything continues forward. So great question there, George. Hopefully that helps you better understand how that works and what's set up there. Next question we have is from Michelle. Are there certain annuities, terms, labels that we should stay away from? Really depends on what you're trying to get into your retirement, what you're trying to use there. Couple of things that I would mention. Number one is variable annuities for many people are not going to be a great option for your retirement. Why? Biggest reason, there's two main things. Number one is most variable annuities are not going to outperform what you would get inside of the market, and they're subject to the same market risk, meaning if the market goes up 20% in that annuity, you may only get 16, 18%. 14%, whatever the spread is with the annuity and the annuity company. If the market drops 20%, you're going to go down 20%. You're going to lose that money. So when we look at it and we compare it to the market, what we find is oftentimes it's not as productive, but comes with the same risks. Now, all of them are not structured that way, not by any means telling you shouldn't buy a variable annuity. For some people, it is the right option, but that's something you want to look at. The other issue that you need to look at when we look at these variable annuities out there is many of them are loaded with fees that can become very expensive for you, especially if you do have a down market. You may be down 20%, you've lost all that, and you may have a 3, 4, 5% load inside of there that you're paying that then takes that balance down even further. These are the things I would worry the most about. Again, it's going to vary based upon your situation and your retirement, but the best thing I can recommend is get educated. Learn how these things work. Don't just go down to a local brokerage office selling annuities and try to get the first product they're willing to sell you. You want to go to classes. You want to understand how they work. We've got some great classes out there. Retirement Alpha is a great one done by Tom Hegna, where he talks about annuities in great detail and how an annuity can help stabilize and make a retirement plan even better. Take the bond portion out of the portfolio, put an annuity in there. What you find is that retirement's going to always perform better than with the bond itself inside of that retirement plan. But that's one. You've got paychecks and playchecks where we talk about it. And also, Don't Worry, Retire Happy, also taught by Tom Hegna, is another great option if you're looking to use annuities in your retirement in some form or fashion. Next question here is from Patty. Is there a health insurance for this life insurance? So when we talk about life insurance, let's talk a little bit about it. We use a term primarily with the insurance that we sell and that we implement into most plans, what we call a life insurance retirement plan. This is a term that was coined by David McKnight, the best-selling author of the Power of Zero book. But what we're talking about here is a special type of life insurance that meets certain criteria. We want it to meet this criteria because if it doesn't, the insurance policy is not going to work as an income stream during your lifetime or as an option for a long-term care event. Now, if you are trying to just buy death benefit, you want to be able to pass benefits on to your beneficiaries, you want to pass money on to them, well, you don't necessarily have to have all these requirements, because some of the requirements we're going to talk about here, and I'll share these with you, are only dealing with policies where you're trying to take money out. But in regards to Patty's question, there is no health insurance tied into life insurance. There are what's called chronic illness riders, and that's one of the requirements a life insurance retirement plan should have. So let me quickly go through the 4 requirements. First one is we want it to be safe and productive. We usually will use a fixed indexed policy because of this. Whole life policies are very safe, but not very productive. A lot of those are not going to even outpace inflation. Variable policies are productive, but not very safe. Market goes down 30%, you're going to go down with it. So that's number one. Number 2 is low fee, something that many people struggle to wrap their arms around when talking about an insurance policy, because so many people have talked about how expensive they are. Well, when we include the cost of the insurance inside of there, these things shouldn't cost you more than 1.5% of the benefit you're getting outside of here. Very similar to what you would be paying for a traditional money manager to manage your stocks or your mutual funds. So we want it to be low fee. Number 3, we want cost-free and tax-free distributions. Tax-free is pretty easy. All you've got to do is make sure that you follow the guidelines from the illustration and the policy so you don't turn it into a modified endowment contract. That's done by putting too much money in. So there's guidelines. You can't just put all the money you want into here. Now, if you're putting a policy together and you've got a certain amount of money to put into a policy, yeah, illustrate it to where you can get that money in, buy the appropriate amount of insurance, not turn it into a modified endowment contract. But once it's established, you're governed with what you can put into these policies. You can put less, but you can't put more than what they allow. So that's number 1 from a tax side. Number 2, keep $1 in there when you pass away. If you don't have $1, if you end up liquidating that account, you're going to have a taxable event. Any growth inside of there is going to become immediately taxable to you. How can you stop this? Many riders or many insurance policies have a rider that is called an overdistribution rider. So if you end up taking too much money out, you can turn that on to where you're in a position to where that policy will stay in force. As far as the cost side, much different. Many top tier insurance companies are charging 3 or 4% for you to get access to your money. So what we want, if we're going to take money out for life needs during our retirement, maybe shock or aspirational expenses, maybe we're turning it into similar to a pension where we're taking money out of this life insurance plan each year, borrowing against the cash value. Maybe we're using it for a long-term care event. All these things, what we want to ensure is that the costs associated with it are not such that it's making it prohibitive. Fortunately, I and myself have a policy I bought years ago before I knew this information that I kept in place, that it's going to cost 2% if I want to ever get access to that money. So as a result, it's going to be the money my kids will inherit. They're going to get that life insurance policy when I pass away. The last one is that no fee chronic illness rider. This is where if you've got a long-term care event and you want to use your death benefit instead of using long-term care insurance, if you haven't purchased that, don't have it available, and you don't want to dig into your other assets or rely on a family member, you can use the policy rider for the chronic illness situation. If you can't do 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, you're in a position where you would be able to use this life insurance policy and its death benefit in advance. So long answer, Patty, I know, to a simple question. No, there's not health insurance, but there can be insurance to help cover a long-term care event because the way it's structured, and definitely a death benefit that's available there if you need it for you and your family at some point there. Next question here is from Kumad. What should someone who already has an annuity do? Well, this is a great question because we see this all the time when we're going through and we're doing our planning, working with dozens of people across the country and helping them get to a more safe and secure retirement. We'll often find a situation where they have an annuity in place. First thing you want to do, if you're not sure yourself, is confirm with someone who understands these that you've got the right annuity for what you're trying to accomplish. Many times what we find is they do. It's a great annuity. It's done very well for people over time. They've been able to have a lot of success with its growth. They have a good income stream option on it once they annuitize the product. All that's going to be fine. Now, if you've already annuitized the contract, you're pretty much stuck. Once you do that, you're stuck into whatever you have. But you may be in a situation where you have the wrong policy. You got sold a variable policy maybe, and what you really wanted was a fixed product. You didn't want to have to be subject to the market risk. Or maybe you've got into a product that the fees are just way too expensive. They're not in a situation where the returns are keeping up with the fees. So you're seeing very little growth inside of that annuity. Well, what you want to do if that happens is there's what's called a 1035 exchange. This is where you would be able to transfer the annuity assets into another annuity without having any tax consequences. Now, I'm not recommending anyone just go out and do that yourselves. Please don't take what we've talked about today and go, oh, Dave told me if I've got a variable annuity, I need to roll out of it. That is not what I'm telling you at all. Telling you what you want to do is make sure you're getting the right advice. You understand the product. It's not just about the advice, it's you understanding how the product works, understanding what it's going to accomplish for you. And then if there is an option to roll it over and need to roll it over, you can do that. Another thing, though, you've got to look at if you are dealing with these annuities is there are going to be surrender charges on most of these. So, Kamad, if you've had one that's just gotten put in place maybe a year or two ago, you may be stuck for a period of time inside of that annuity unless you're willing to pay those surrender charges, which most times doesn't make a lot of sense because oftentimes they're so high. But again, maybe it's a situation where we've got in with a really bad annuity and shouldn't be there. Hopefully that helps. Again, biggest thing we want to do is to educate before we ever replace, and we may never need to replace. We want to make sure that we analyze these things as part of an overall plan because that's going to make a difference too. When we look at our overall plan, the assets you have available, the other guaranteed streams of income that you might have, the answer may be substantially different for one person than it would be for another. Maybe that variable annuity that you've got out there that's subject to market risk is just fine based upon your other asset allocation and the other things you've done for your retirement. So definitely don't want to just hurry into making quick decisions on what we're doing and risking disrupting an otherwise well planned out retirement plan. Next question here, is there a best site for annuities? Not that I know of at this point. That doesn't mean there isn't one that exists out there. I know the company we work with that helps oversee our contracts with the 50 various insurance companies that we have access to, they have created a internal platform that we can use to help us shop various annuities to make sure we're getting the right products as fiduciaries and having responsibility to our clients. They allow us to shop these products to be able to compare each one of them on a back end. From a forward facing side, I do not know. And if someone's listening to this and you're aware of a site, please feel free to share that information. But I don't know of a great site where you can go out there and just shop all of the various annuities that are available to you, like we would be able to do as advisors, where we're able to do that on the back end with what we do. Next question here is from Mary. How much do you need to invest in an annuity to draw $2,000 a month from an annuity? Well, I wish the answer was simple. I wish I could tell you that if you put X dollars in there, that you're going to be able to take $2,000 out. Couple of things to look at that are going to affect this. So the younger you are, the less money you're going to be able to take out, the smaller percentage of your overall investment. Why? Because you've got a longer period of time that these companies have to pay you money out on a monthly basis. So if you start at age 62, you're going to have a lot more money in there than if you start at 70, 75, or 80, because it's just all a matter of time. That's one thing you've got to look at. Number two, you've got to look at the insurance companies themselves, the products that they're selling. All annuities are not created equal. Some allow for a income stream, much higher income stream, than others that are growth annuities, where you're really trying to just build up asset value. So you've got to look at which annuity you've got, which one you're trying to get, and then use that to calculate. I will give you a general guideline. Now, if you are a 65-year-old, general guideline would be somewhere between 3 and 4% with what you would be able to pull out of these. Now, there are some annuity companies that may allow you to get higher distribution rate based upon their bonuses and stuff. But if you were to say, if I were able to get 3%, what you've got to do is just take that $24,000 a year, divide 3% into that, and that's the amount of money you should have. Or if it's 4%, divide 4%, and that's the amount of money you should have. But unfortunately, there's not a one size fits all. They're not all going to be the same. This is why we shop these products, why we do homework on the back end, because for some people, they need to take some extra risk from maybe the annuity company itself to be able to get a much higher distribution rate. Maybe they need that to just survive, to supplement that Social Security, where others are in a position that they're saying, look, I can be with a top tier company that's paying average distribution rates and be just fine based upon the assets that I have in my retirement situation. Let's double check here. It doesn't look like we've got any questions from the live audience. If you're here, let me know you're here. If you've got questions, please feel free to put those in the chat panel. Hopefully I'm looking at the right place. That's another problem when you're doing this on your own. When you've got someone as good as CR who generally manages all this, sometimes there can be hiccups where I'm not doing things the way that I should. So if I am missing a question out there that you've submitted because I'm not looking on the right place, I apologize. Hopefully we'll get that figured out. And if not, by next week, CR is going to be back here with us, and he will be able to help answer deal with any issues we have so we can get your questions answered. Next topic we want to talk about is reverse mortgage. Now, a couple of things to understand with reverse mortgage. I do teach an hour-and-a-half class on it. Great class that goes through a lot of detail. If you want to understand the product, this is a good class to go to. But reverse mortgages are not for everyone. Small percentage of the population are really the only ones that should be taking advantage of a reverse mortgage. And they're not what you think they are for many of you. Many of you think that they're just an expensive way for the government or some other organization to take your home. That's not what it is. It's really an option for you to be able to get an income stream during your retirement when you may have no other assets. Or for some of you, maybe to even use that money to invest. I'm very leery of that. I've not seen a lot of situations where that works out, but for some people, that may be an option as well. But we do teach the class. If you want to better understand it, I would encourage you to go there. But today we're going to be answering some questions that attendees had who attended this reverse mortgage class. If your county lets you defer property taxes as a senior citizen, this is from Marvin, can you do that along with a reverse mortgage? Generally not. And the reason is because that reverse mortgage, one of the requirements is that all these things have to be paid and that they're in a first position on that home, that they keep these things paid. So no other agency is going to come out and claim a right to that home and that property. And then the reverse mortgage company's stuck with a bunch of money that they've given to you that they're not going to get paid back on. My understanding, if they defer these, if your county does, they're wanting to put a lien on the property for those unpaid taxes that they're having to pay for, which is going to create an issue with your reverse mortgage for most of you, especially if you've got a home equity conversion mortgage, because now you may be in conflict with the rules of the reverse mortgage that you ended up putting in place. So you may want to talk to, just to confirm, if you're looking at this and you're concerned, I would talk to someone who actually sells these products. I'm an educator. As a result, I'm not going to know every single nuance of the way these programs work. But my understanding is you're going to have some issues there, Marvin, because of the way the equity is handled and the way the attachment to that equity works when you're dealing with a reverse mortgage. I mentioned there a minute ago the home equity conversion mortgage. This is the most popular mortgage that exists out there for reverse mortgages. It's governed by the government. This is where I mentioned before, it's not just mortgage companies trying to steal your home. There's a lot of rules, regulations. In fact, they're going to require you to go through a counseling session before you get one of these loans to make sure you understand what you're getting into and you understand the way that the program works. Got Jeffrey's question here. Should we open a custodial IRA for our kids? How would this impact financial aid when applying to schools? Is there any other investment start early for our kids? You can do this. I don't know how that's going to impact the financial aid. My understanding is that for these IRA accounts, they do. What I would look into is doing a life insurance retirement plan, because when we look at the way they accumulate and the tax structure of those, what we find is they are not included in the FASBA guidelines, the assets that are inside of there. So there may be options if you start early enough to build up a substantial life insurance policy for your kids. They would be able to use for some school if they needed to, wouldn't affect the financial aid that they're available to get access to. And if they don't end up using it, could continue to grow throughout their lifetime, be available during later years to borrow against if they choose to, or to just have a life policy that they could then pass on to beneficiaries at some point in their life. This is, if I were you to look at, there are people out there I know that do college planning. We actually work with an advisor that does a substantial amount of college planning where they put these pieces together. They help people get everything structured, something that does have to be done years in advance. You're not going to go in there senior year of high school, sit down with an advisor and get everything structured for that freshman year to where you can get your finances in order. But there are a lot of options out there and things that can be done if structured correctly. Next question. Oh, retirement alpha. Yeah, we talked about this. Let's jump here. I guess we only had a couple of questions there on reverse mortgages. This next one here is retirement alpha, the class I was mentioning before, using annuities to improve your retirement. It's been proven. Math and science proves that if you take your standard retirement portfolio, stocks, bonds, allocated based upon standard allocation models, that if you take that, replace the bonds with annuities, you're going to have a more productive retirement. You're going to have a safer retirement structure, because those bonds can, or those annuities can provide better rates of return in a much safer environment. So today we're going to answer a few questions there. Looks like we've got about 5 minutes left before we wrap everything up. So hopefully we can get through 2 or 3 questions that we have available from this webinar. Elizabeth's question: is there a standard formula for how much you should pay for an annuity? So how much of my 401k do I need to turn over for what annuity amount? There is some standard guidelines, and it's not necessarily just for an annuity itself. Realize there are other products out there that can function like a fixed indexed annuity that can provide you protection of your assets during your retirement years as you build up to those. Our recommendation is for principal protected products, which an annuity would be one of these. You're going to want your age as a percentage of 100 invested in these type of products. So Elizabeth, if you were a 50-year-old and you had $1 million, we would want $500,000 inside of these principal protected products. Why don't we want more? Because when you look at it, if you get too much, many times these annuities where they're working more like a bond portion, you're not getting the rates of return you need. So the older you get, the safer you want to be, the less risk you want to take, and the more you should get inside of there. That's the guideline that I would use on your side, Elizabeth. If you're, again, whatever your age is, 50, 60, 70, wherever you're at, that's the percentage of your portfolio that should be in principal protected products. Can include annuities, also could include a life insurance retirement plan, and may include structured notes that you've got put together from the bank. Now, what I wouldn't include in there is from a safety side. You may say, oh, you want assets that are protected. Why don't I just go ahead and put the money in a bank account or maybe a certificate of deposit? I've got FDIC insurance, because these products are not even keeping up with inflation. So even though you think the assets are protected, what you find is that every year you're losing substantial amounts of money. I've seen it with clients many times. They've got $1 million setting in a bank account, paying them $80 to $90 a year in interest. Well, just take 3%. That's $30,000. If you've got a 3% inflation, that's the buying power they ended up losing, thinking that they were safe, that they were not making much of a return, but their assets were safe. Well, now they've only got $970,000 that's left in buying power, even though their bank account shows that they've still got that $1 million left. Something you've got to take into consideration. Those are the guidelines that I would use. Doesn't all have to go in at once. You can put money in these over time, but that gives you some guidelines on how that works. Next question here looks like this maybe we can get to a couple more here. Let's see how this goes. Raul, his wife and I are 60 and 58, are both retired. Both of us receive a pension from former employer. We have IRA, Roth, and taxable. Good cash reserve. Does it make sense to open an annuity? Probably not. I mean, if you look at the situation here, and it sounds like you've got decent pensions. If you both worked for former employers, appears like maybe most of your lives, you've got your Social Security benefits. Now, some of that may be reduced based upon government pension offsets or really windfall elimination provisions, I guess probably in your situation, that you may have some of that reduced, but it sounds like you probably got the majority of your income taken care of, those paychecks. If we look at it from the class on paychecks and playchecks, you've got your paychecks covered. Now, when we look at the playchecks, all of this other money, the IRAs, the Roth, the taxable, my recommendation is to start getting that into the right bucket. What we want to do is to get that in a tax-free environment if we can, so that you can take those tax rate risk off the table. Now, if you are looking to stabilize some of your other income, you don't want to have a subject to market risk, you definitely could use an annuity as an option and may never annuitize it. Maybe you've just got the money in there as an investment to ensure that if the market drops 30%, you're not going with it, but still able to get better rates of return. A lot of options there, a lot of different things, but probably if you look at this on an overall situation, from what I understand, Raul, I would not recommend in most situations where you go out and buy annuities on top of the other guaranteed streams of income you've got going on. The only other one you may need to consider is if those pensions are not inflation adjusted, may want to put smaller annuities in place that as time goes out, you lose the buying power that you currently have from those pensions. You can put yourself in a position to where you can have the income that you need to get through there. Looks like we've got 2 minutes left, double checking to make sure we don't have any questions in the comments section. Looks like we're good. I'm going to answer this one last question, and then we're going to be done for today. You can get back to the other things that you've got going on. Last question here from Julie. Do you suggest charitable remainder annuity trusts? For the right person, I do. I have no problem with people structuring these various trusts that are out there. The charitable remainder annuity trust, not a bad option to put out there to allow charitable organizations to get access to some of the assets that you're wanting to provide to them anyway. And you can get some various tax benefits because of the value of the contribution that's going to end up happening through these various trusts. So not against it, not going to work for everyone. You've got to look at your own situation, what you're trying to accomplish. Are the tax benefits or the structured benefits that you're going to get from it worth the cost of putting it all together? If so, maybe a great option for you. If not, maybe your best option to just go ahead and donate money to these various charities some other way. Definitely not against trying to help people use different strategies, different processes to get them to a much better position in retirement. Those are our questions. We're through 30 minutes. I can't believe how fast time goes. As we wrap things up, do want to let you know, if you have not gone to our Getting Safely Through Retirement course, you need to do so. We offer the course for free. It's not going to cost you anything. We're in the process now of getting a on-demand class where you'll soon be able to get it just right there on our website, where you can watch that. Going to take you an hour. Right now, you are going to have to go to a different platform to get that. We teach it as a 1.5 hour class. In fact, later today, I'll be teaching that class. But I encourage you to go there, because in this class, we're going to talk about the 10 financial risks facing your retirement. You need to understand those. And then we provide 5 solutions, 5 strategies to get those risks out of your retirement. What we find, if people can eliminate the risk facing the retirement, not only do they sleep better at night, not only are they more comfortable during the retirement, but we're finding that assets are lasting substantially longer, sometimes 10, 15 years longer than they otherwise would if any of these risks start creeping in and causing havoc on the retirements people have. My name's Dave Hall. I'm the Prosperity Guide. Look forward to having CR back with me next week as we continue to answer the questions you have about your retirement. See you next week. Look forward to all being back together. Bye.